Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fieros with Tri-City Equity Group. Today, I'm excited. We've got Darius Ross on the show. So Darius is a founder and managing director of D. Alexander Ross Real Estate Capital Partners, a business venture with a multi-tier focus on real estate operations, including acquisitions, commodities trading, arbitraging, property management. A pro arbitrator and business consultant with 30 plus years of entrepreneurial experience, Darius's expertise covers a scope of CME and large businesses, real estate acquisitions in a range of $250,000 to up to $1 billion. He recently also authored a couple of books we'll talk a little bit about on the show. One of them, the top 10 post-COVID multifamily real estate markets, and your own PPP, prepare, participate, and profit in the top 20 most distressed real estate areas. His work explores the shifting dynamics of real estate in today's world and includes strategies to navigate those markets by minimizing risk and maximizing profit. Love that last part. Darius, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. Look forward to being and having a great time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you taking some time out for our audience and for me here. And I'm looking forward to our conversation. But for those of our listeners that may not be familiar with you, had any contact with you, real estate dealings or any of that kind of stuff, fill us in. Give us a little bit of your background. How'd you get started in real estate and business? Did you come from a long line of entrepreneurs and real estate tycoons, or how'd you get started in the business?
I'm the beginning of the tycoons. The kids aren't interested in that ingredient, so I'm the new one on the block. There were tons of entrepreneurs in the family, but none of them necessarily dealt in real estate in particular. A few of them went to like Erie and Chicago and so forth, got their starts. But mine was basically, I left a bank in Chicago, First Chicago, and went from there into buying small 2 to 4 units in Galesburg, Illinois, and went from there into continuing to invest. So mine was pretty much a basic, if you want to call it a shift of mindset. The first 4 houses were propped up with a leg and a kickstand. So I started the hard way. You get your hands dirty, you get everything dirty, you take some losses. So from that, we went on.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's. I feel like that's most people's story. We try to start. So you got to start somewhere, wherever you're at. The key thing there is that you started, right? That's where we feel like a lot of people get stuck. They get stuck in analysis paralysis, and there's 1,000,001 different ways to make money in real estate. But of course, you have to pick one lane, even if that's not where you finish. You got to get moving somewhere. Well, obviously, it sounds like you started maybe some markets that were smaller markets, kind of Midwest markets. But I know you're in New York now. So were you still buying property in Illinois and those same markets, or did you expand out to different areas? Or
with the Midwest, Ohio, Wisconsin, Indiana, and so forth, Illinois, Pennsylvania, New York, and so forth. But the big thing was Resolution Trust. It was a game changer, because folks that aren't familiar with Resolution Trust that was when the S&L industry completely got decimated. So many different things actually allowed for opportunities where you could buy everything from radio stations to commercial office buildings to shopping centers. So that actually kickstarted a lot of entrepreneurs an open lane, whereas S&Ls were just going out of business. So they were just dumping their portfolios.
do you see some now? I love talking to people who have had some experience, let's say, in the business. Like we're talking savings and loans, like that didn't just happen. This has been a while. So a lot of people, especially kind of people coming into the space now or within the last few years, everybody's been used to kind of the sugar rush of, the cheap money and the market's been easy and everybody's been making money. But now, of course, after rates shot up and there's been a lot more volatility, hey, operating expenses are way higher now with insurance and say property taxes, depending on what market you're in. You see some volatility in the market now. What prompted you to, let's say, identify some opportunity? Because sometimes people just can't see that. They're, oh man, it's chicken little. This guy's falling, like everything's doom and gloom. It's going to be like this forever. And too often, I think we get stuck into that. We think it's going to be great forever, and we also think it's going to be bad forever. Was that a mindset shift for you, or was there something that you were like, no, there's got to be some opportunity here to make something happen?
Well, see, I've been branded the junk man and the doom slayer, because at the end of the day, I'm always looking at the fact that I want to be in and out before the damage hits, and I want to get back in when the damage is done. So case in point, when we're looking at what's happening now, Blackstone, BlackRock, etc., these guys are walking away, which tells me that there's going to be a lot of damage to be had. When you're looking at $40, $50 trillion of dry powder, for those that aren't familiar with the dry powder, that cash is sitting on the sidelines. They're sitting on the sidelines on purpose, sovereign wealth funds, pensions, and so forth. They're sitting there looking at these opportunities. office buildings, multifamily buildings, and so forth. The key to it is that nobody's recognizing that the cheap money doesn't continue. There's $50 trillion in debt hitting in the United States. There's hundreds of trillions of dollars around the world. And unfortunately speaking, there are, if we call it the day of reckoning, it's coming. The CMBSs are going to become a nightmare. This year, 20% of those will actually be coming due, 2025, 2026, and ultimately 2027. So the markets that are going to be most doable will be the areas where everybody ran into: Miami's, the New York's, the LA's, the Chicago's. So there's going to be a lot of carnage, a lot of pain. So with that in mind, when you look at the smaller tutorial markets, that you're looking at suburban Chicago, suburban upstate New York, multifamily areas of Pennsylvania, Florida, and so forth. So folks are not looking at those areas that are off the beaten path, where there's a lot of money at and people can't move. See, where they can't move at, you're in good shape. Because they know from the go. They work locally, they live local, everything's local. So that's the things that I look at.
Yeah, nice. I mean, you're finding a lens to be able to look and see opportunity. It's more like contrarian, where it's like, okay, well, hey, if everybody's running that way, okay, I don't want to go that way, right? I want to look for the opportunity where they're not looking, right? And it's always going to be the case. All right. So for those of our listeners trying to, well, hey, maybe you're just starting now. Maybe hey, you've been sitting on the sidelines, you got some dry powder, you got some cash personally, been waiting. Okay, well, should I jump in? Well, look, there's opportunity in every market. There's opportunity in every market cycle. There's going to be somebody in that market's making money. So it's like that's where it's up to us, or you as an investor, to be creative, to develop a bag of tools where you can go in and identify, okay, where can I, which way is the market going? Is there something that's being overlooked? Because you got to think too, there's this point, some of these guys are too big, so they're not going to be able to take on certain things. They don't want to expose themselves to certain risk because they're trying to manage, let's say, their portfolio on some other end that may not be affecting your local market, or may not be in their market, your direct market, let's say, but because they're trying to manage the risk somewhere else, hey, maybe they're pulling back somewhere, or that creates a little spot where here in Hawaii we would call it a little puka. Like there's a little spot where, okay, hey man, I can get in there and I can make something happen because they're overlooking it. They're too big, or maybe for some groups it's too small. And so there's always going to be an opportunity, an area to be opportunity, to identify an opportunity, rather, make something happen where most people aren't looking.
I'll insert one thing too. In this new market now, it's very important that investors understand the legal game. You might have a lawyer, you might have various advisors, but you must understand the legality of what's going on, because right now, everything is going to come down to legality, whether these contracts are valid, whether these leases are valid, whether or not the transference of assets are going to be doable, and so forth. So now the best thing an investor can do is have his legal head on. I mean, you want to dive off into the bankruptcy laws, dive off into how leases are operating. What are you doing as far as with the vendors and so forth? Because we're going to be looking at a situation where a smart thing to do is, if you're a real estate investor, you might find yourself owning a entity that's within one of your properties. For example, it might be the barbershop, it might be the beauty salon, it might be the laundromat. All of a sudden they get behind on whatever's going on. Forget about foreclosing on them, take over. Listen, walk out the door, I'll give you a couple of pennies, I'll take over this little spot. You just never know how it's going to work out. And that's happened a lot. So you have to now think more in terms of negotiations, the due diligence on your end as to how you can make this deal work, and not necessarily get rid of the tenant. Sometimes the tenant can start working for you. So there's a way to work this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I feel like we've started to see that, like a resurgence of, let's say, creative terms and creative financing these last couple of years, where it's like, hey, well, rates shot up. They're at 8-9%. It's like, well, we're not used to that. We're used to 2-3-4%. Okay, well, hey, how can we make some stuff work? I know the last multiple deals that we've bought have all been loan acquisitions, assumptions, and that's been a popular thing now. That's actually come back onto the table, where people weren't looking at that before, right? Or not only that, like to your point, right? Hey, finding some creative terms. You may be finding somebody who's like, hey, look, I've lasted as long as I can, and I'm ready to exit. It's a functional business, just like how you're saying. I've got tenants in place, but I don't want to deal with the headache anymore. Like, I'm just done. Or like how we were just talking about a little while ago, maybe they've got another asset that's doing super poorly. Like they've got an office space or something that's really hurting, and it's affecting their performing retail business, right? Or multifamily or whatever. And so like you're able to take advantage of that collateral damage, come in and take over at a performing asset or a business or whatever. So learning, kind of putting on that cap of, okay, well, What else you got?
Get the toy store. That's it. Not be afraid of challenges is the one thing I would say to the audience. You're going to learn creative financing on the one hand, but you're going to learn deal making at its best. I mean, if for nothing else, you really have to understand that deal making now is going to take a different thread because we're going to be in the most treacherous waters over the next 5-10 years.
Now let's dive into that. Why do you say that? What are you seeing? And obviously you touched on some of it, but for those of our audience that may not be keyed in, they're just working professional. They're just trying to, all right, like, hey, I'm just trying to get started. Why do you say that the next 5 to 10 years are going to be treacherous waters?
Well, number one thing I've used is that the Congress and the Senate created a law that was called the bail-in, which means they were anticipating that there is going to be a problem down the road. So there's no longer going to be taxpayers paying the cost of the bank's failures. I'm predicting that it's going to go from 5,000 banks down to 500. Now, I've done shows where they're looking at me like, nah, it can't be. And I said the same thing about Kamala going into the White House. But here's the bottom line. We're looking at $35+ trillion of government debt. That's going to continue to skyrocket. In the meantime, the taxpayers are not going to be on the hook. The depositors are. Banks are going to say, well, guess what? One day you wake up and there's a run on the bank. The only difference of it is reverse. They just take the money inside the bank to protect themselves. The government shuts it down, takes the money inside the bank, and well, you get a promissory note. The reality of it is this is what's going to happen because so many banks are sitting on sour loans and there's no money. The tenants aren't paying. The retailers aren't paying. The retailers are walking away. When you look at companies like Big Lots is the retailer's junk store. Now, the junk store is going out of business. How does the major retailer stay in business? He's the guy that gets all the garbage. Now, here are options of garbage with the stuff nobody else wants at that time. So when you start looking at this, it's like you've got major chains that are going out, and then you have other chains that are taking over their chains, and they're going out. So when you're looking at what's happening here on a global basis, it's not a U.S. base, it's a global problem. You have debt at an all-time high, and wars have created this, all types of conflicts, you have all types of situations that are going on. So now we are in the sweet plans that have created all these surplus plans and all these surplus biddies. The day of reckoning is coming. As a result, these mortgage obligations are skyrocketing. Some of them are adjustable rated. You can't pay it. When you're going from 2 or 3% up to 12 or 14, no. Credit cards. People are not paying those credit cards. Car payments. The average car payment $1,000. It's realistic, and you're only making 20, maybe 30, and people don't understand that the average person in the country only makes 35, 40,000. Now living in an economy of $100,000 economy, okay? Grocery bills, the same thing. So just looking at the implosion of costs, it's just a matter of time. When we look at New York investors, and I've been saying this for years, when New York investors started going west, the average apartment now in the United States for a 2-bedroom is $3,000 to $4,000. They're only making 20,000, folks. How are they paying it? That's the question. So it's like there's going to be some adjustments here, and the pain is going to be felt for quite some time. I would say we're going to have real estate on sale, not for sale, and the price is probably going to be 40 to 50%. The stock market's probably going to take a 60% correction, so we're probably going to be somewhere around 7,000 points. So when we're looking at 25, 30,000 point drop, that's a lot of pain.
Yeah, no, for sure. So there's a couple of things that I think of when I come from that. For one, of course, like that's okay. What can we do to hedge? So that should be a question that everybody's asking, because for one, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then also two, to your point, there's a ton of bad debt that's sitting out there. It's a global economy. So stuff that's happening in a different part of the world, if we think that it didn't affect us, that's absolutely not the case. I understand, like, okay, well, our day-to-day life may be, okay, well, how much am I paying at my local pump? How much am I paying at my local grocer? That kind of deal. But there's after effects, let's say, that happen literally across the globe that will affect what you get at your pump, what you're paying for your local grocer and your TV from Walmart or whoever, like electronic stores, whatever. So that's definitely something and everybody's feeling the pain. So you mentioned all of the debt that's out there, and it's like, okay, well, for one, they've painted themselves into a corner. So really, there's only one way to go from here, guys. Like, more money printing has to come. There's no real solution for them at this point. So those that are holding hard assets, right, and performing businesses and that kind of deal, like you're going to come out ahead. So that's been my mindset. That's been our mindset for a long time. You need the boat. You need something that's going to float when those waters start rising. So whatever kind of hard assets that looks like precious metals, real estate, maybe digital assets. Some people, just depends on what kind of your cup of tea is. There's definitely options out there. What are you focusing on, let's say, for acquisitions now, kind of knowing that, hey, this next 5-10 years is going to be rough. What's going to be your focus for that? I know you kind of go through some of that, maybe through like your books and whatnot, but kind of give us a highlight of what our listeners could do to help protect against some of that.
One of the big things of it is looking at smaller markets and being realistic with your rent costs. Although you want to turn around and live a very comfortable lifestyle as an investor, you're now going to have to do what I call cutbacks. Start realizing you're going to have to take some cutbacks in cost and not necessarily live the same lifestyle you've been used to living, because your tenants are going to take some transitions. The other part about that is that, okay, if the rents, you might be looking at the market and saying, okay, I can pick up $3,000 and maybe go around $2,200 just to give yourself some cushion. You have some room to work with. In addition to the fact you want to make sure you get business continuation insurance. That's a big overlooked entity, because in the business continuation insurance, you're guaranteeing yourself if something goes wrong, like what happened during COVID. There was no effect. We had the continuation insurance. We had to fight the insurance company, but at least we knew there was a reserve there. That was a big key. The third thing of it is being also realistic as to how you dive off into businesses that are for sale. Now, when I say that there's 10 million businesses for sale that baby boomers own, most of those businesses are functioning. Now, having said that, those baby boomers are going to close up 80% of those businesses and walk away, but those things are still functioning. So investing in those small mid-market businesses and then looking at how to expand those, and in some cases, create a portfolio or platform companies and combine them together to take advantage of that market. Huge market, because private equity groups have a 5 to 7 year timetable. So they're going to be looking at buying that platform company. If you take 4 or 5 and put them together, voila. So that's kind of where I'm playing things at.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that makes total sense too, because for one, like the small mom and pop business is, like we were mentioning earlier, it's too small for them to want to be interested in by itself. But if you have a small portfolio of them that are performing, right, then okay, now that's more interesting. They're not going to go after a barbershop, but they may go after, if you're able to roll up on 20 of them or whatever, in addition to the real estate that they sit in and that kind of deal. Okay, well now maybe that's interesting. So that's good. And then definitely too, to your point, there's the conservative underwriting. Like hey, you're talking about not, let's say, being realistic with your rents. Hey, you're going into underwriting a property, guys. Like, don't anticipate on being able to drive rents as aggressively as we had been. That's just not going to be the case. The costs are up just way too much. You mentioned it earlier with, let's say, rising automotive costs, a big, like, credit card delinquency. If you guys haven't taken a look at that, delinquency is up huge. Credit card usage is up massively. I know the auto space, like the lending space right now, is brutal, and it has been for a while, ever since the rates went up. So that's definitely something you have to, as a business owner, keeping an eye on, because that may be affecting, that's a gauge. Like that's a gauge of what your tenant, let's say, and maybe if you've got a commercial tenant, their customer base is dealing with that. So you're looking a little bit further down, like, okay, well, do they have that disposable income to be able to spend on the service? So think about that from in terms of exposure for you as hey, I own a commercial retail space. Okay, great. Is your tenant able to pay? Can their business survive? So you have to be mindful of that.
See, I'm throwing something else in there too. See, the thing that we don't understand necessarily is, I've been called the wired real estate. This is what I say. You've got to be a little realistic on this note. If you turn around and you're looking at, say, your commercial tenant, or even your retail tenants, or even your multifamily tenants, and you're taking in the cost, if you do an average cost outlay and say, okay, if food prices are going up, grocery prices are going up, and when I say food and grocery, two different things, because just the gross product of food and then the grocery itself and each of the retailer. You look at the gas and you look at the cost of transportation and their credit card expenses. If you just take a peek at that and kind of go, okay, now am I too far into this where I can't even make the buildings cost as well as a profit? Now your profit margin might be down to 1 or 2%. That's being realistic. But as long as you can maintain the building and get a little change in your pocket, be happy with that and ride the tide. Some owners won't budge. It's like, I gotta have this, I gotta have that. They really haven't said empty. No, forget empty. Look at it. If I get 1 or 2% above board, I'm still maintaining. The time will come again when the glory days will be back. 2030, the glory days are back. We got to ride from 2024 to 2030. It's timing. Long time. Just be patient.
Well, and like I said too, people don't often think like in that long enough time horizon, right? They're thinking a little too short term, where they're just, look, if you can weather the storm and be, for one, have reserves on your end. And that's kind of comes back to what you were talking about. Like, okay, I'm going to have to cut. I'm going to personally have to cut back, both from just a practical standpoint, but also too, because now that gives you more dry powder to go after something. Like if you don't have, hey, you might see a great opportunity, but because you were still living the lifestyle, let's say from a couple of years ago when everything is performing well. Okay, maybe you don't have as much ammo to go after an opportunity. So it's like, okay, but if you have the wherewithal, and really that should always be the case, but there's times to deploy and there's times to kind of reserve and cut back and help to identify the opportunities. If you don't have that, then it's just like, oh man, I wish I had. Yeah, because like Barry said, the glory days will come back, but you got to get there.
A good example of that was when Donald Trump bought 40 Wall Street. That building was a song and a dime because the Japanese just wanted to get the hell out of New York. And he walked away with it for nothing. They were paying him to take it off their hands. This is the situation you're looking at. You're going to have lenders that are happy to give it to you, but you got to be at the right place at the right time. So often you miss out on the opportunity because you're so greedy on everything else. You're not looking at, wait, you just back up for a minute and appraise the situation.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually really good. And like I said, this is where it's helpful to actually understand market cycles, because again, the market does this, guys. It doesn't just go up. Over time, it may do that just as an overall trend, but you're always going to have kind of this up and down within the market cycle itself. Being able to help to identify and where that's at in your, because this happens on a macro perspective and also a micro, like it's going to happen on a large scale, and then it's also going to happen differently maybe on in your local geographic area. So depending on what kind of industry is there and that kind of stuff, it's going to feel differently. But being able to identify that, and then, okay, how can I position myself best? And maybe you're not in a position this market cycle. Okay, well, hey, that's on you. That's okay. You can still educate. You can still take away. Let's prepare ourselves. Let's maybe for the next time. So maybe you're catching the tail end of things here. You can jump in, grab something. Okay, well then this will happen again. Just like Darius is talking about savings and loans. Well, guess what, guys? That didn't just happen. That was like a decade ago at this point. That happens again. That's going to happen again. But you want to be prepared for it, or else you're going to be missing the boat in terms of being able to take advantage of the opportunity. So. Well, very good. Well, tell us a little bit about your books. I know you got your books coming out. Give us a little bit of maybe some backstory on some of the books and what the listeners can be looking forward to, and when that comes out. When do they come out, exactly?
First one comes out, Leadership DNA, will be out October 24th. That'll be dealing with leadership styles, and do you have the DNA to be a good leader and quality and focus on that. So I do a chapter that's an anthology on just the whole leadership concept. The other books are based upon real estate and around real estate, just being able to focus on particular markets and participate in profit and how to take advantage of those markets. There will be another book that will be focused on just dealing with the concept of, in some cases, some entrepreneurs need power freezes, how to actually pick themselves up in the morning and kind of go, okay, now what am I doing this? I'm going through the worst of the times. I'm struggling going through it. So there's a 25 power freezes book. And then there's another one for entrepreneurs that are dealing in the concept of life is good, but they're trying to figure out the dating realm. So it's dating after 50 for those of us that have reached that realm. So those are the situations.
Darius got some tools for a little bit for every day.
There we go. There you go.
Well, that's actually a good reminder, because it's like, all right, we need to have a well-rounded life. Life is not just, okay, my business. If you're struggling in some other facet, whether, hey, I got a thriving business, but my health is in the tank, like, hey man, it doesn't matter. You'll use all your resources to deal with the health challenge. You got to have, wealth is just not one arena. It's multiple facets. So you got to be able to take care of yourself, whether that be relationships, health, financial wealth, of course, but it's multi-pronged. It's not just one thing. So that's good. I'm glad that you actually I'm glad that you're putting that out there, let's say from an entrepreneur's perspective, because everything that we get, it's not necessarily that way, right? So they don't understand what an entrepreneur's life can be like, right? So navigating those waters, even on the dating side, like that's another realm.
Well, I talk about that too in the dating appraisal. I akin dating appraisal to real estate, and now you have to find out what you're dealing with in that dating appraisal and understand that this is not going to be easy. You got to put a little work into it. You got to figure out the kinks to it and the problems and so forth. So I appraise the concept of male, female, and how you deal with either party on what they're looking at, the chimney is the heart and so forth, and kind of relate it all.
That's good. And a lot of times I feel like, we'll understand, let's say, the mechanics of, whatever our work is. And like in this case, we do real estate, but then we don't apply any of that to our personal lives and relationships and all that kind of stuff too. So no, that's very cool. Very good. Well, it's the point of our show, Darius, where we jump into what we call our fire round, just a little bit more rapid fire Q&A. Is that something you're up for?
Absolutely.
All right, awesome. Well, first question. What is the best book that you recommend other than for our real estate folks? It's Rich Dad Poor Dad, and maybe other than your own. Do you have some go-to books that you recommend for, and it can be for whatever. It doesn't have to be business, real estate. It can be relationship. It can be whatever.
50 Laws of Power and Sun Tzu, The Art of War. I recommend that period, especially for young entrepreneurs. Because you really have to understand how not to engage situations. And 50 Laws of Power, understanding how to connect and basically create circumstances for your favor. And actually get off into Greek mythology, and I recommend those books definitely, and particularly speaking things that relate to mysticism. That's very important that you understand how to connect with the earth and all the different things, factors that create things that make you kind of appreciate blessings. Because so often we don't take into account the blessings that we get, and they just don't come by osmosis. There is a God or some type of superior power connection there. So taking advantage of it.
Yeah, we a lot of times we'll get into this trap of thinking, all right, well, hey, we're at the pinnacle of mankind and society. I'm like, okay, well, we've got tools, we've got technology, sure, but mankind doesn't change. It's if you look back at history and you look back at previous writings, I mean, we're the same. We will deal with the same issues. They may take a slightly different form just because of the tools we have available at the time, but you're still dealing with the same challenges. So yeah, no, I love that. I love that you recommend that, especially for our readers who are not, or listeners who are not familiar with some of, and those are very powerful writings, but like take a dive into history. You can learn a ton. So, all right, very good. I like those recommendations. All right, next question. What would you consider your superpower to be?
The ability to read and negotiate people.
That's definitely a superpower. Well, very good. All right. All right, next question. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned over your career thus far?
Never underestimate anybody and what they're capable of, good and bad.
Actually, that's really good.
Because you will get some surprises when you least expect it.
I like that you put in that little caveat of good or bad. We start things off with best of intentions, of course, but just how we were just saying, it's like, okay, well, you're dealing with people don't change or haven't changed, let's say, over history. Hey, you know what? Those same struggles are going to be underlying, regardless of what we see kind of on the outside. So yeah, no, that's really good.
And I guess I throw that one in there because so often when you're dealing with sellers, you think you got this deal done. I've been there. You think you got the deal done. And the night before, I've been talking to my uncle. I've been talking to my wife. And you're going, say what? Are you for real? You want to change the terms?
I've had that happen. Yep. No, you're 100%, 1000% correct on that. So yeah,
I've had a situation where we thought we had the deal done and someone forgot to take a look at the appraisal and the survey, and the surveyor and the appraiser found out the septic tank was going out to the lawn. We thought the deal done, but nobody looked and saw the fine print. So these are the things that never underestimate anything.
Yeah. No, that's very good, sage advice. And this is why it's important to glean from people who have had a little bit more experience, a little further down the road, to help us avoid some pitfalls, right?
Read the fine print always, every detail. Don't miss any detail.
Yeah, this is actually good. And I'll touch on this just real quick. This is good because like that, you're in New York, and there's some areas that are more legal focused, let's say, and you mentioned this when we kind of started, than other areas. I bought property in multiple states, and some areas is not like that. Like some areas, it's like, hey, you know what, handshake is good. No, like if you're coming from an area, or you can learn from somebody who has a focus on, let's say, the legal. You want somebody looking over that. You want somebody looking over the fine print and the details to make sure you're not missing anything. That can work both for you and against you. So either way, you want to be prepared for it. So no. All right, last question for the busy working professional. Somebody's trying to work towards financial freedom. What advice would you have for them?
Number 1 of 4. Number 1, understand your limitations. Do not get in over your head when you're not aware of what's there. Number 2, look at your money as if it is the last thing that exists, because your money will get feet and it will get very funny if you're not prepared to watch where it goes. Number 3, beware of those around you, because at the end of the day, if they've never been down the journey that you're trying to go down, sometimes they can give you bad advice and lead you to some place where you never thought you'd end up at. Broke. Simple. And number 4, the most important one, be aware of what money can and can't do. Money can solve a lot of problems, but it can also create more problems.
Yeah, I like that. Actually, it's actually really good. People also tend to think too, like you said, it can solve all of my problems, maybe, and that's not the case. Like it can do a lot for you. You'd rather face those problems with resources, but it can't do the work for you. If it's a mindset issue for you or a relationship issue, well, hey, you can throw all the money you can at it, but it's not going to change anything. So it's actually good. It's count the cost. Like be very aware of what you need in that instance and what you can and cannot solve with the resources available to you. Excellent. Well, for those of our audience, if they want to reach out, they want to get in touch with you, they want to learn a little bit more about you, what's the best way for them to do that? How can they connect with you?
They can look on YouTube. They've got tons of videos on there. They can go to my website, dariusross.com, and they can reach me directly as Dr. Speak to You. That's DRSPKCOYOU at Yahoo. And they can just leave something in the subject matter there that's about podcasting, speaking, and so forth.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to share with me, share with our audience. Thanks so much for your wisdom and your experience and imparting some of that. And guys, don't forget we'll leave the link in the show notes, but make sure you check out his upcoming books if you want to learn a little bit more about Darius and pick open the brain, learn some about business, about dating. He's got lots of input that he can help you out with. So, but I really appreciate you, Darius.
Thanks,
Have a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Aloha.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good conversation with Darius Ross. Darius got a lot of sage wisdom there. Obviously, he's going to be able to share it with us through his books. He's got several books that are coming out, so make sure you check them out. But also, too, just general life experience, business experience. You always want to, I think you want to glean and learn from people who have a little bit more experience. They've been further down the road than perhaps you or I have, right? We never want to get into a position where we think we know everything. Right. You can always learn more. There's always more to learn, especially if you're going into a new direction and you want to be able to avoid some potential pitfalls, speed bumps in the road. Right. So we want to take the time out, have some good conversations and glean from people who have been there and done it. Guys, if you're interested in investing with us, you want to learn a little bit more about our company, go to tricityequity.com to learn more. If you enjoyed this episode and you want us to keep cranking them out, and please leave us a review. We'd love to get your feedback on the show, continue to bring on great guests, bring you guys value, and continue to put the show out for you guys. If you're here in Hawaii or you're coming to visit and you want to check out and connect with us here locally, join our Facebook group, Honolulu Multifamily and More. You can also find us on meetup.com, on Bigger Pockets. We'd love to be able to shake your hand, put a face to the name, and actually meet you in person. And you can connect with like-minded investors, entrepreneurs, business owners. We'd love to be able to connect with you here locally. Guys, that's going to be it for today. We'll see you on the next episode. Go out, take some action, go have some great conversations, and we'll see you on the next one.